aka tools, and one industrial revolution later, the girls evolve from cave dogs to modern dogs, building futuristic towns and spaceships. Throughout the episode, as the girls go through different stages of evolution, they also go through different stages of their lives as a mother and child. As fish, Bluey says that she's the mommy fish and Bingo is the baby. Then as frogs, Bingo pretends to be a toddler and Bluey teaches her how to catch flies. Then as T-Rexes, Bingo becomes a big girl. Then as cave dogs, she's a teenager. And finally, in the last stage, she's all grown up, ready to traverse the universe on her own. She thanks Bluey for looking after her and leaves on her spaceship. Bluey, now much older as shown by her having to use a cane, crosses the styrofoam threshold which represents her death, and she gets to live with her creators. All while this orchestral masterpiece is playing, and suddenly you realize you're crying? When did that start? And then Bandit ties the allegory all together at the very end saying, "Ah, this is heaven." Are you joshing me right now? This preschool show was able to tell a clever allegorical story with tasteful religious undertones in how many minutes? Did you just make me feel emotions over a cartoon dog? This isn't the only episode you can make an in-depth video essay on. There are plenty of other episodes that hit just as hard as this one. While I was doing research for this video, it got me thinking about another foreign animated kids show with 8-minute long episodes that focus on a family of 2 toddlers. Except, unlike Bluey, this show is universally hated. Caillou, it's Caillou. I had this idea in my head that people only hated Caillou because he was a more accurate portrayal of a toddler. But in the handful of Caillou episodes I watched, I was reminded, oh no, that's why people hate Caillou. Because he sucks. His brattiness isn't even important to the plot. It comes out of nowhere. Caillou will be getting ready in the morning, he spills cat food and says, "Gilbert, look what you did." He's at the beach and this bird who's done nothing wrong gets told to go away. And there's a bunch more examples of Caillou being a whiny piece of shit. And I can't help but think that Caillou's screeching, piercing, whiny voice does not help him be a likable character. I bet real toddlers can be little punks sometimes, but why would you show that in your cartoon and not have him learn any lesson? There's never a lesson learned in Caillou. Since Caillou was a brat all the time, a lot of people, myself included, wondered why Caillou's parents never disciplined or even tried to change his bratty behavior. But after I thought about it, I realized it would be a very weird episode of Caillou if one day Caillou's mom was like, "Caillou, what did you do to your sister?" "I made her look pretty, Mommy." "Caillou, that was Mommy's expensive makeup. How many times do I have to tell you not to touch Mommy's things? Come here, you little twit." Mommy, why are you hitting? Getting a spanking. Mommy, you're hurting. I've had enough of you, Caillou. I hate you. That kid got what was coming to him. I don't know, maybe that episode would be cathartic to some parents. Anyways, getting back to the actual best children's show ever, even though Bluey is literally the most mentally intelligent and educational show for the minds of children, teens, adults, and parents, some unnamed mouse company decided to censor some of the episodes on their platform. It's the strangest things that got censored too. This horse pooping, Bandit getting hit in the groin, Bandit saying the word groin. This hitchhiker is no longer from Argentina, that one's kinda weird. This pretend cat saying it will pretend pee on the curtains. Bandit hinting at wanting to get snip snip down there. Adults, you know what I'm talking about. And the last 10 episodes of season 3, which are some of the deepest episodes in the series, aren't even on Disney+. But that could just be a licensing thing, I don't know. I kept waiting for the infertility episode. I heard so much about it. I finally got to the last episode on Disney Plus and thought, oh, okay. They're saving the deepest one for last. All right, let's do this. And the episode was about the family playing courtroom to determine if Bandit farted. I hope this video convinced you to give Bluey a chance. I mean, you're still here listening to a grown man talk about it, so you gotta be at least a little interested in it. Through its relatable and realistic portrayal of family life, the show has not only entertained, but also taught valuable life lessons to its viewers. The show's emphasis on play and family bonding is so refreshing to see compared to the usual fast-paced, mind-numbing shows aimed at kids. Bluey reminds us all the importance of spending time with loved ones and finding joy in the everyday. And if you still don't want to watch Bluey, Have you thought about getting high and watching it? Thank you all so much for watching this episode of James getting obsessed over something he probably shouldn't be. Did you have a favorite part about this episode? Yeah, that was my favorite part too. Just one quick
You know, I've really got to get healthy.
I'm a vampire. I'm a zombie. I'm Belgium in the Congo. Yeah, there's nothing more terrifying than Belgium in the Congo. We can never let that happen again. Belgium loves to act all chill up here nowadays in Europe. Just don't ask them about their adventures in Africa. You'll definitely regret it. The state of Bolivia tweeting out, about to go fight. I'll post the video after. Yo, I got my butt beat, bruh. I'm not posting that ish. Bolivia with another classic example of mess around and find out. How many times are we gonna have to show this until people learn? This is actually the bloodiest battle in all of South America in the 20th century. I guess Bolivia thought they could just bully Paraguay since Paraguay lost 90% of their male population in a war like 100 years earlier. Actually, it was only like 60 years earlier. Man, just look at those belligerents. Argentina and Italy. Then there's Czechoslovakia. Why was Czechoslovakia supporting Bolivia? I don't understand. I guess they weren't gonna be around for much longer anyways. Germany's gonna say no to that. The USA saying, did we just become best friends? Half the people they've ever gone to war with. Yep. It's really kind of weird how that's all worked out, huh? Here's a map showing every single country we've technically been at war with. Of course, to get our independence, we had to fight Great Britain, and Canada was a part of that. We're definitely buddies with them. We're definitely buddies with the British as well. We fought Japan back in WW2, who had control over the Korean Peninsula. Obviously, we're now closer than ever. There was the Vietnam War, which was pretty heated for a second there, but relations have gotten pretty good as of recently. I mean, America's pretty much cool with everyone back in Europe. There definitely still are a couple places that we haven't become best buds with, but yeah, almost. We defeated the USSR! Speaking of a country that we actually haven't become friends with after the fact, here's the world giving the USA their medal. Gotta make sure it's authentic. Gotta make sure we celebrate. Gotta show everyone how cool we are. More celebrations. Meanwhile, Poland and Finland are like, are you done yet? Yeah, and they did it like way before us as well. Finland obviously resisted the Soviets during the Winter War. Meanwhile, Poland fought the USSR to remain independent after WW1. Everyone forgets about that. This is claiming Poland was the only country to ever formally defeat the Soviet Russia, or later called the USSR. There's just other things in Poland's history that, you know, kind of have that get overshadowed. They won the battle, but not the overall war in the 20th century. You know what? Is that even true? Because technically the USSR isn't around today. Meanwhile, Poland still is. I count this as an absolute win for Poland. America, showing up all giddy and happy, proceeds to get beaten up because of no history and you took your lands from the natives. Meanwhile, this other guy watches from behind this wall. Oh, that's Australia, but it seems like New Zealand's sweating a lot more. Okay, this really needs to have some additions. Was the first country not to come to everyone's mind was Canada? Canada has literally had like the exact history here, at least when you consider these two things. That's not even all. There's actually a lot of countries we can include here. When my little brother asks me what caused WW1, I think this is the exact gift that goes through every man's head whenever a question like this is proposed. I still remember a handful of moments where someone close to me asked, Drew, what happened during WW2? Nothing could have ever prepared them for exactly what I was about to tell them. Actually, this is a trend that's been going around. Girlfriends asking their boyfriends like what happened during the world wars. They get so excited to talk about. I would be excited. A silver lining of our digital age is that you can ask a Habsburg his thoughts on anime girls. Someone made this absolutely beautiful waifu, then someone else tagged a real life Habsburg and what they thought about this. Oh wow, thanks for sharing. Women don't wear the golden fleece. Apart from that, fantastic. I love living in the 21st century. Literally, this all started from just a driver making a wrong turn. And here we are, being able to ask the descendant of a century-long lineage his thoughts on anime girls. Seems like the timeline is going incredibly smoothly at this point. I totally forgot that you could just technically still marry into the Habsburg family. Like, what am I doing with my life? Why is this my #1 goal? Most WW1 soldiers. I just lost my best friend right in front of my very eyes. I know. Tell me about it. I don't have any boots. Meanwhile, inside of the mind of this WW1 soldier, Sauron, Bilbo Baggins, Smaug, the Fellowship. How was he even able to stay focused in those trenches? His man's mind must have been racing. Of course, J.R.R. Tolkien was the creator of Lord of the Rings, as well as, of course, The Hobbit, and his experiences in the Great War would obviously shape how he would write his novels. Probably shaped his entire existence, not just his creations. It's insane how well those movies have still held up. I'm not trying to be biased, but it's just like, there's still been nothing even remotely close to this good. Hey, we just wanted to inform you that the Prime Minister has gone missing. Netherlands, look at me. Did you f***ing eat the Prime Minister? Nervous Dutch noises. I am so sick of your I love how he immediately knew that obviously the Dutch ate their prime minister. Because what else would they do? I mean, it's one thing to like oof your leader. I get that. France did that. But why you gotta go this far? Why would you eat his flesh? Me resisting the urge to ask what prime minister tastes like whenever I meet a Dutch person. Salmonella, a man of culture. France dissolving the Holy Roman Empire, but also France coming to the realization they created Germany. And the thing that rose out of those ashes would be much, much worse, at least for France, like 50 years later. The Holy Roman Empire finally came to their almost 1,000-year reign in 1806. Unfortunately for them, that would literally just lead to more consolidation than ever. Poland and Lithuania, to this day, being forced to kiss still whenever they're being mentioned. This is literally just every American, and probably just a lot of other people around the world. The name Poland, Lithuania, it just flows off the tongue. Whenever these two places are mentioned, it's like, unite again, please. During his recent meeting with Admiral Horthy, the region of Hungary, Mussolini is reported to have said, "Why do you call yourself Admiral when Hungary has no navy?" The Hungarian responded, "Why do you have a finance minister?" Yo! That is one sick burn. Maybe Mussolini should have chose his words a little bit more carefully there. Another situation where you mess around and just flows off the tongue. Whenever these two places are mentioned, it's like, unite again, please. During his recent meeting with Admiral Horthy, the region of Hungary, Mussolini is reported to have said, "Why do you call yourself Admiral when Hungary has no navy?" The Hungarian responded, "Why do you have a finance minister?" Yo! That is one sick burn. Maybe Mussolini should have chose his words a little bit more carefully there. Another situation where you mess around and find out, oh, you meant that literally? In the 1880s, the director of Harvard Observatory was often frustrated with his staff and supposedly said, "My Scottish maid could do better," so he decided to hire her. Wilmania Fleming ran a team for decades, classified thousands of stars, and discovered white dwarfs and the Horsehead Nebula. I think she was gonna need her own maid after that. Pretty epic. The first humans to domesticate cats be like, "He jumped in my car and wouldn't let me leave without him. I don't own a cat. Is this how you get a cat?" I think the title should be changed, "First cat to domesticate humans be like," because that's really kind of what it was like. The Egyptians loved them so much they literally viewed them as gods. Literally everyone, the first time they hear about Prussia, is this just Russia with a P at the beginning? Pretty sure that was my thought process as well back in the day. Unfortunately, this is just another example of an English L. In English, we refer to this country as Prussia, but in German, it actually should be more like this.
Preußen. Preußen.
Okay, that doesn't even sound remotely close. Where did we get Prussia from that? You'd think we'd treat them with a little bit more respect since they literally created Germany. Europeans, when they realized Fahrenheit was actually invented by a Polish person. No! We can't clown on the US for this anymore. It can't be. Okay, this was actually saying this unit of measurement was made by Daniel Gabriel Fahrenheit. He was Dutch, though. What? Oh, but he was born in Poland, I see. Okay, so the Dutch have to be blamed for this as well. Why do we love this system more than the Dutch and Polish then? That's what I want to know. Roman soldiers tunneling under this city during a siege, but then they release bears into the tunnels. Okay, this is literally my worst nightmare. Like, I'm already terrified of bears enough, as many people already know. I'm good. Being trapped in a tunnel with a bunch of bears coming down the tunnel. No, I'm okay. No, thank you. They also released bees in the tunnel as well. I also am not a big fan of bees, gotta admit. How do you gather up just a bunch of hungry bears and then direct them inside of a tunnel? That seems equally as terrifying. Turkey shows plan to reform the Ottoman Empire. Meanwhile, Armenia's reaction to that information. Yeah, they're probably not gonna be too happy about this. Are some old traditions coming back as well, or what? Muslims rule India for 300 years. Muslims when it's the Hindus' turn. Alright, I'ma head out. Time to go ahead and make a nation called Pakistan. They had their fun there. They don't want to play there anymore. We really need more India history memes, honestly. Disney fans when they go to New Orleans, but instead of talking frogs, they get mugged and bad things happen because of a hobo. Yeah, it probably doesn't help that, they're dressed like this too. They're really kind of just creating more of a target for themselves. This reminds me, I really want to go to Mardi Gras one day. That's got to be the most insane experience. Myth: Germany and Napoleon's France invaded Russia in the winter. Fact: Germany and Napoleon invaded in the summer, and by the time they had reached deep into Russia, it had became winter. I actually knew about this. I feel like it doesn't disregard the memes though. You gotta know that, winter's around the corner. Like, you need to knock out Russia instantly early because it's gonna get pretty cold if you wait too long. You would have thought Skinny Mustache Man would have given himself a little bit more time. June 22nd, why not like April 1st? He knew the winter was gonna be brutal. Like, why did he wait that long? I guess a better question is, why did he even do it in the first place? I guess that's why you attack Russia in the winter, giving yourself 6 months of hype. When you're fighting communists in Vietnam but aren't succeeding, so you try booming their supply lines in Cambodia only to destabilize the country, allowing communists to take over there. The Cambodian communists then oof millions of people before being overthrown by Vietnamese communists you originally were fighting. Classic American strats right there. What else did they think was gonna happen? This whole thing was just such a disaster. It seemed like everything just backfired for the Americans. 101 on what not to do. You put a bug in a wooden replica of the seal of the US. A bug in this reference is referring to like a microphone so they can hear what's going on. You get a bunch of kids to gift it to the US ambassador. He hangs it in his office. They don't find it for 7 years. Yeah, the USSR got pretty lucky with this one. This is referred to as the thing or listening device. How did it not get discovered for 7 years? You didn't, I don't know, check it? You didn't open it up for 7 years or what? Maybe it's easier said than done. And big thanks to the patrons. I am the kidnapper. I oofed Drew since no one paid his ransom. This channel's now run by AI. Australia is real.
Today's video is brought to you by Dashlane. Be sure to watch throughout the entirety of this video to learn how to keep your online accounts more secure, 100% free on your first device. I think many of us at this point have heard the anecdote about the music industry being just an extra step more evil than others. And while every business has a dark side, Spotify's dark side in particular has always been interesting to me, as it has both interested and perplexed me for how wide open it was for abuse. While on the surface, the company might seem great for a consumer as you simply pay $9.99 and then you have access to the world's library of music, what is yet to be seen by many is what lies beneath the surface, which is an entirely underground world filled with hacking, fraud, botnets, stream farms, and deception. And while you may have heard that Spotify is particularly notorious for not paying artists very well, what many people don't understand is it's not really because there isn't enough money coming in from consumers, or rather piracy stands as the alternative. It's actually quite the contrary. Spotify has 144 million paying monthly subscribers and 320 million total active users, to which the remaining amount actively come back to be served ads. But rather, the dark truth surrounding the platform is that it is flawed in such a way that people have taken to using it to actively siphon and defraud money off the platform. And while click fraud and other types exist on every single website on the internet, I think Spotify is a very unique case for a number of reasons, because the points that we're going to cover today raise fundamental question marks about the industry and people who are involved in it, as well as Spotify themselves being completely complicit in this type of fraud. As it stands today, music streaming has become the largest single revenue source for the entire industry. But naturally, you have to ask, if the subscription number has continued to go up, then why is it that the value of streams have gone down nearly 35 to 40% in that exact time? And while you might just attribute this to simply more music being released today, what's interesting is that Apple Music has managed to keep their streaming rate relatively stable, while the amount has actually gone up since 2016. Anybody looking at these numbers can see a clear trend involving devaluing music and Spotify's growth as a company. And for a company that sees no clear path to profitability as long as they can show investors growth, it has made shifting the goalpost for those artists who built the platform a long-standing joke. It's a tale as old as time, and when you dive into the specifics of how the entire operation has been actively allowing money to be stolen away from artists for the sake of pleasing record labels and their monopolies, when you see the full picture here and where money is being redirected, you'll see this clear dark side to Spotify that makes Apple's anti-competitive App Store look like a walk in the park, because at least there's some opportunity for the average person who uses that platform to actually make money. Because according to Spotify's own data that they've released in their Q2 report of 2020, the top 98.6% of all artists generated 90% of all of the streams on the platform, and the remaining 98.6% take up 10% of all streams on the platform. And since Spotify so cleverly pays you based on the percentage of market share in the total pool of streams, this amounts to 107 million euros paid to the bottom 98.6%. This means that 98.6% of people on Spotify made an average of $11 a month, meaning that many of them lost money just to use the service, because this doesn't factor any of the cost that goes into promotion or the creation of music. And does this mean that 98.6% of people simply make really shitty music, or that nobody wants to listen to it? No, it's that Spotify has created a system that selectively steals money away from people on the platform without consumers even realizing it. Now, before I attempt to outline the worst types of fraud on Spotify, it's important for you to understand how Spotify works as a whole. And what you need to know is that the company operates under a freemium model. A large amount of bonus features are there for those who pay the monthly fee, and the company also collects advertising revenue for free users. I will note their advertising is not nearly as lucrative as on YouTube, as they don't have nearly as much data on the people who listen. But essentially, all you need to know is that every quarter, Spotify pools together all of the revenue from the advertising and subscriptions. Hereafter, they take a 30% cut, and then they divide out each fraction of that pool to pay a proportionate amount of revenue. This means that if you got 10% of all of the streams in the United States, you would get 10% of all of the subscription revenue and advertising revenue that came from the United States. And just so we're clear what counts as a stream, it's only 30 seconds of listening to a particular track. This is the way that music sales are structured nowadays, and while this might seem like an honest way of running a business with everyone getting their fair share based on their popularity as an artist, where you start to run into problems is when you add the human element to it. Because with the current system, every time someone inflates their streams in a variety of ways, it steals money from other artists. The more streams in each quarterly pool, the less each one is worth, diluting an honest artist's work. And to say that people inflating their numbers has gotten a bit out of hand is a bit of an understatement.
Ladies and gentlemen, what's going on? Once again, I'm Nev from NazTech, but today I want to talk about phone farms or phone farming.
Alright, so you're getting into this business and you are looking to get smartphones, and you see all of these YouTube channels, or you hear of all of the people that are on the forums that have tons of phones, and you're wondering, how do I make it to that point?
Overview, I am a phone farmer. I use smartphone applications, mainly for Android, to run ads and whatnot to make me some money.
On this video, I want to teach you how to earn money on Spotify, whether you know how to make music or not. Once your music is on Spotify, this is one of my accounts. This is my meditation audio account. The Spotify plays are high quality and they charge $2 per 1,000. Basically a 50% return on your investment. Every million streams you get $4,000 back. You get about $4,000.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Now check out this guy's battle station. I really like what I see here.
Once you start generating streams, the Spotify algorithm picks up and it puts you on more popular playlists that will sustain your monthly listeners, right?
Hi, today I'm just showing Spotify Plays Booster. Once you have your accounts, which we have a mass account creator.
It's an application that pays you to stream music through things like Spotify.
Show you how much Spotify is paying out as of January 2021.
Online, but check this out right over here. As you can see, a payment was sent to me for simply listening to my favorite music.
Towards users who spend their time and resources listening to music, so they're paying us for our time and our hydro and our phone use.
Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to another video. That one up right there. Then we have 2 current musics going, 1 phone that's also turned off, and then 2 AA musics that's actually running.
Let it play while you sleep, so don't even listen to the song really, and honestly just let it play in the background. If you are not from the US, you can download a VNP app.
Make money, and I took advantage early, and I learned a lot about streaming.
1 month and a half will get you $20 per phone.
And I call this my music money machine. So whenever I want to make a little money, I'll click play.
Total earned was $93,876.
At a certain point, you have to ask whether this entire system is even better than piracy, because keep in mind, when you pirated a song back in the day, you just stole from one artist at a time. But now when you inflate your streams, you steal from everybody simultaneously. And that's not even mentioning the fact that you open the door for completely unrelated third parties to steal from you as well. Back in 2017, it's believed a single entity out of Bulgaria stole an entire $1 million off the platform. This occurred when a playlist by the name of Soulful Music, containing 467 tracks, all from unknown artists, had appeared out of nowhere, seeming to climb the charts all the way to number 11 as the top playlist in the US. There were only 1,200 active listeners on this playlist. All of them were legitimate sources of revenue and credit cards, and with an average track duration of 43 seconds, it's believed that they squeezed out anywhere from 72 million to 103 million plays per month. This was all dependent on the main contingency of whether or not the stream farm would skip tracks after 30 seconds. While Spotify stated at the time that they were continuing to invest heavily in refining the processes in which that they would detect this type of fraud, you have to understand that this probably isn't the most urgent issue for them, because with those $12,000 that they got per month extra in revenue, they're kind of incentivized to keep the stream farm thing going. It really doesn't matter to them whether artists lose their money, because at the end of the day, they still get their 30% cut on the top. I'd say Daniel Ek, the CEO of Spotify, cares more about his net worth and shareholders, because the moment that Spotify stops growing is the moment that they're going to stop taking losses and look for profit. And let me ask you this, why would Spotify want to make streaming fair when they could make it competitive and grow even faster? Ultimately, it's up to the labels to fight amongst themselves between who has the biggest artist. And while your everyday fraudsters will make up a portion of that pie, it's nothing compared to the record labels themselves at getting numbers up. And to be fair, Spotify does make some effort to combat obvious forms of streaming fraud, but to say that they've even put a considerable dent in the overall problem is a pretty good joke. And one estimate from Rolling Stone, who interviewed a record label at the time, estimated that the total fraud that goes through Spotify yearly could be around $300 million to artists. And while $300 million a year in fraud is really bad for the entire system, keep in mind that stream dilution affects smaller artists even more. For instance, Justin Bieber is allowed to encourage his fans to fundamentally steal money away from other artists on the platform. But when an indie band uploads a silent song so they can have enough money to go on tour, the record label will then tell Spotify to remove the indie band's song. While two wrongs definitely don't make a right, you could definitely make an argument that someone like Justin Bieber, who has a far larger audience, does more objective damage but does not get punished. And realistically, for the record labels to continue to stick around, they have to keep power coming back to the top, even if it means using sketchy tactics that they will often impose selective enforcement to others for. If you recall, I said that the labels were the best at inflating their numbers, and perhaps one story you may not be fully aware of is the day that YouTube purged billions of their views. On December 19th, 2012, users flooded to the Google Help forums. Many people were asking why countless numbers of their videos had been deleted off the platform. And throughout the winter cleaning, nearly every mainstream artist was collateral damage. Whether this was fully intentional or not, that is yet to be unknown, but what we do know is that at the time, YouTube staff confirmed that this was an enforcement of their policies. 100+ million was deleted from Lady Gaga's channel, 400 million was deleted from Chris Brown's channel, 850 million from Sony BMG, 156 million from RCA, a billion views from Universal Music Group, and countless others. Billboard was quick to come to the defense of the labels in this situation, and cited this as just some in-house cleanup. Further attempts to explain this away had cited that many of the record labels had just simply started posting on their Vevo channel instead. Now what's hilarious here is that even if we gave them the benefit of the doubt, after I looked into the inception of Vevo as a company, you're just one trip to the Wayback Machine to have your mind blown at just how fake the entire industry is. And taking a look at the first capture that shows up for Michael Jackson Vevo, he managed to get 500 million views on his Vevo channel despite his main channel not even being able to cross 2 million, along with more subscribers than the main channel. And if you go through every other Vevo channel that existed at the inception of Vevo's launch, with many of them having hundreds of millions of views with next to no engagement on their channel whatsoever. And how about we bring up the official Vevo channel itself? Now, I'm no mathematician, but 12 billion views and 4,000 subscribers and 66,000 channel views seems a bit low. Here, it supposedly states that the YouTube channel signed up in 2006, but Vevo wasn't started till 3 years later. And no captures in the Wayback Machine show anything from this domain pointing pre-2009. Vevo just simply appears out of nowhere and just starts racking up billions of views, all while getting no subscribers. Now for further context, more data did come out about this later on after I did a bit more research, and Essentially, Google was working in partnership with the record labels to drum up advertising business for YouTube. And in an article from readwrite.com, it was also revealed that a Google employee did anonymously whistleblow the situation. Apparently, he was originally an employee for YouTube in 2007, but was hired to bot Vivo videos in 2009, in which he claims that he botted more than 20,000 videos. And what further cements this guy's testimony is when you look at the actual data on the videos. Kanye West's Heartless got his first view on December 7th, 2009, and immediately jumped to nearly 30 million views. Britney Spears' hit song from 2005, Toxic, ended up getting 33 million views in 24 hours as well. And Lady Gaga's first hit, Just Dance, got uploaded to Vivo, and we see another similar trend. However, they upped the ante nearly to 90 million views. And while we've taken a bit of a tangent from talking about Spotify, I think it's important to highlight these things that have occurred in the past whenever record labels work with a company. The music industry relies heavily on its fake it to make it strategy over and over. While this type of manipulation may be easy to spot in hindsight with a Wayback Machine and what I'm showing you, this is still largely flown under the radar today. I think ultimately you should know that record labels still definitely do artificial manipulation of their numbers. It's just a variety of new methods that we're going to cover that are harder to detect. Now, when I bring up two-factor authentication in regards to accounts on Spotify, you might be surprised to learn that Spotify has yet to implement any such system on their platform, despite the feature being in consideration for seemingly 6 years. And to be fair, you can add two-factor authentication if you choose to log in to Spotify through Facebook, but this is not Spotify itself, and the vast majority of users don't have any kind of security on their accounts. The reason behind this is unclear, but what I can say for certain is that this has definitely led to even more stream dilution on the platform. Apple Music has two-factor authentication, and while you might think this is relatively harmless, as the most a hacker could do is listen to music when you're not around, this has led to an entirely separate form of streaming fraud that is far more advanced than the previous kind, and that is hacked accounts being used in streaming botnets. And this has led to an entirely underground business of selling hacked accounts to other users who don't want to pay premium. Now, I will say you can definitely find these packs or bundles of accounts on the dark web, and they're usually compiled with your login information when it is leaked from a database somewhere on the internet. People who end up getting their hands on these individual database leaks will often try your information against Spotify. Another method for collecting passwords is phishing, and it's usually when you get an email that appears to be from Spotify themselves, but after the email baits you into logging in, your password is then sent off to their database instead, despite looking like an official login. And something you should know is that as far back as 2015, a Vice article demonstrated how to make a streaming botnet that made around $30 a day with free accounts. Now, while regular streaming fraud is already rampant on Spotify, there are actually a few more benefits that seem to exist from having hacked accounts on botnets. For one, it doesn't require any phones, but rather just a bit of coding knowledge, and with the hacked accounts, the streams are more valuable than free accounts. Furthermore, if you were to use your own credit card to set up 10 different Spotify accounts and pay for it yourself, then it would likely get detected by Spotify themselves and they would shut you down. But with this method, you can anonymously boost artist streams through hacked accounts, and the artist can then turn around and say, "I have no idea what you're talking about." And for the record, I'm not condoning this is simply for educational purposes with this whole video, but this is far more illegal as it involves the unauthorized access of people's accounts. But it does appear that there may be some evidence that could allegedly lead you to believe that some people have been participating in this behavior. And this is far more concerning because it raises some potential questions about money laundering on Spotify, which we will touch on in a bit. But the story I have for you regarding this particular instance comes from French Montana. Now, this song was released on September 27th, 2019. The song completely flopped despite having two top artists on the track. Now, the song still managed to chart for 5 weeks, but eventually left the top 200 on Spotify. Then 3 weeks later, it reached a new peak on Spotify, coming in at the top 21 spot. And this is interesting because a couple posts had started to gain some traction on TikTok, which were kind of used as a decoy to essentially make it seem like the song was getting popular again. And it was at this time that many people started to notice and talk about on Twitter, where many people were complaining to Spotify that their accounts were being hacked and repeatedly streaming French Montana song. Now, what made this more of a dead giveaway than it needed to be was that if the song was in fact gaining momentum again, you'd expect the streams to come back on both platforms, Apple Music and Spotify. But the song was at 1,192 on Apple Music and had only been going down. Now, French Montana ended up blaming 50 Cent in a very bizarre twist of events, and what makes this very hard to believe is that they only started arguing or had gotten into a conflict a couple of days prior, but the streams were bought long before that, according to the screenshots from the users on Twitter. Now, I honestly doubt that French Montana bought the streams personally, as it was likely someone from his management, but at a certain point you have to ask if top artists are cheating the system in this way. It sets them up with perfect plausible deniability that would never result in any actual punishment. Just for perspective here though, if Justin Bieber was upfront willing to manipulate his song to the top, then you can imagine what goes on behind closed doors. Now, I decided to dig deeper to see if I could find any other recorded instances of this, and goddamn, it does appear to be far more common than I thought. Now, I actually asked you guys on Twitter a while back, and if you take out the people who don't use Spotify here, about 20% of you who do use Spotify said that your account was hacked at least sometime in the past. And I did find actual video evidence of someone's account being hacked in this case from another YouTuber by the name of John Sign, and he documented the behavior on camera to basically see how the bot functions, and I'll let him tell you in this particular instance.
And in my case, the phone also always switched to a Chrome browser, because I mean, if you do those fakes, you do it on a Windows PC, that's the easiest, or play it on Sonos, so it always switched the sound to a Chrome browser. And also the last couple of days I had time to look a little deeper into those 7 minutes that I recorded of the behavior of that phone, and I found out that it switches every 40 seconds, like exactly every 40 seconds. And as we all know, Spotify counts after 30 seconds a song as a play and gives money to that person. And it didn't matter where I switched to, it always did the same thing. It searched for that song and it hit play on that song. So I'm 100% sure someone programmed this phone that got hacked to behave this way.
Now, two things to note here. What appears on John's phone is Her Story by YG, and this video was uploaded June 24th, 2019. And because I was curious to see if this was just some one-off hacking from YG, I checked Twitter first, and quite a few accounts seem to be having the same issue regarding this artist multiple times across 2019 and 2020. Googling the same thing came up with an article from the Seattle Times in which it wrote, "A similar idea occurred to Chris Panton, a 19-year-old sociology student in California, when he was hacked in March. His hacker played an album by Los Angeles rapper YG on repeat. The first time it happened, the music started playing out of his laptop in the middle of a chemistry class." Continuing on in the article, it says, "They would be trying to listen to music while I was listening to music, so they cut me off. Always with the YG album," Panton said. Searching further, another post from the Spotify subreddit here in July of 2019 shows another instance of YG playing from a Chrome browser. And finally, another post in May of 2019 shows the exact same thing, and another user in the comments mentioned that the exact same thing was happening to them on the same exact album. And just to clarify here, I'm not accusing YG of anything, and this could potentially be something he has no idea is going on. But there seems to be multiple instances of this artist being pushed through an illegal botnet. And what's even more puzzling here is Spotify's completely complicit nature in this entire thing. There's absolutely no way they don't know this is going on, and the fact that they haven't added two-factor authentication for 6 years seems very, very suspicious. I will say though that if you do want to listen to Spotify without randomly giving money to people you may or may not like as an artist, you need to be able to protect your accounts, and that's why I'm so happy that Dashlane decided to sponsor today's video. Dashlane is an all-in-one password manager for all of your online accounts that only requires one master password that is only decrypted locally on your device, not held in some database. Dashlane autofills login credentials on every single website and takes the frustration out of having to reset your password every 2 seconds with the forgot password function. Not only does this password manager save you time with login credentials, Dashlane also helps you speed up your online shopping by autofilling shipping addresses and other payment info. Moreover, Dashlane helps you create strong passwords that are unique just in case a info breach occurs. And when any of your accounts are compromised, Dashlane notifies you as soon as it happens so you can protect your account. And to top all of that off, Dashlane's full package also includes a VPN so you can browse the web securely and view region-locked content, as well as dark web monitoring just in case any of your info is found leaked in the dark web. There's a reason that Dashlane has 14 million users, so instead of using multiple solutions that aren't up to industry standards, Make your life safer and easier and try Dashlane for free for life on your first device by heading to dashlane.com/sociable. And for the first 500 users who upgrade to Dashlane Premium, you can use my code SOCIABLE for 25% off. Thanks again to Dashlane for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to Spotify. Now, before I move on from this section, a final thing I want to talk about is that these fake streams may be a way to potentially launder dirty money that is used in cryptocurrency or cash as an off-ramp, which is all the more reason that this is something that needs to be limited by two-factor authentication. Or an even crazier idea is to only give your Spotify money to people that you actually listen to each month. You know how like YouTube Premium works, and then there would be no incentive to bot or fraud or do any of this anymore? Anyways, getting back to money laundering. If someone was running some sort of under-the-table business, an easy way to clean that money would be to simply pay a botnet as long as they could get a return, and the money would go from cryptocurrency or dirty cash to immediate taxable income. I can't imagine that this hasn't crossed someone's mind before, and potentially someone going through a somewhat established artist would not really raise that many red flags. I know this sounds pretty ridiculous if you've never heard any of this stuff before, but it actually is something that has some history in the music industry. And there have been multiple rings associated with many different record labels that have been used to pick up and deliver certain things, certain places, and you know what I'm saying. Nonetheless, it's still very, very interesting. Now for this last section, I could go on finding more and more people likely guilty of faking streams, but after finding out that Michael Jackson had some of his streams faked on YouTube, that kind of did it for me. What I do think is a bit more nefarious in the face of everything I've presented to you today is something I've saved for the final section of this video. Because while Spotify can blame the record labels for a bad payout structure, and they can cite something like streaming fraud as a never-ending battle, how do you explain deliberately creating fake artist profiles to not only dilute the streaming pool, but directly limit opportunity for real artists by taking away playlist spots for them? According to Daniel Ek, the CEO of Spotify, you shouldn't be in the music industry for the money.
In it for the money, it's not the right thing to be going into. And for me, it was just all passion about music and technology and trying to marry both of them.
And while everything I've shared thus far has been others contributing to theft that Spotify is just a platform for, nothing is quite as deliberate as this one. A while back in 2017, many people who began passively listening to some of Spotify's official relaxing piano and other official playlists began to notice something bizarre. Many of the artists on those playlists weren't real people, and let me introduce you to Anna Olgica, who is a part of Catfish Records. Her songs have hundreds of millions of streams, and while you might think, wow, good for her, it's only until you realize that she has no digital footprint and doesn't exist. And if you plug this photo into a reverse image search, you'll notice that this is a stock photo. And to note all the similarities here among all the fake artists who collectively have billions and billions of streams, thus further diluting the entire market share for everybody else. Now, to be fair, Spotify claimed that they never once made any fake artists, and that was completely untrue. But naturally, you have to ask why countless fake artists who were basically all from Sweden, where Spotify was also headquartered, were all starting to pop up on these official playlists. To which it was later revealed after this was discovered in 2017 that the company Epidemic Sound was responsible. And Epidemic, which was basically creating these tracks in-house, which is a royalty-free company, clarified that these people who made the tracks were still getting royalties from them, but they were splitting them 50-50 with Epidemic Sound. Now, while this might seem good and great, where this gets a bit shady is when you realize that Creandum, one of the very first investors in Spotify, is also someone who owns part of Epidemic Sound. So to recap, Spotify doesn't make any fake artists, they just let their investors create companies to funnel money through fake artists that they have on their official playlists. And something you should know about Spotify as a platform is that you can't pay to get onto an official Spotify playlist. It says it right on their blog, and it says first things first, you cannot pay to get on an official playlist. If someone or a third-party company is offering placement on a playlist in exchange for money, this is a streaming manipulation service that goes against Spotify's guidelines for music promotion. Well, I gotta admit, that's pretty weird because Spotify seems to have definitely built out an entire network of artists filling their playlists that aren't even real. I suppose you can really just add this to the list of things that Daniel Ek doesn't practice what he preaches. Like the fact that he told artists that they need to make more music to survive in this day and age, all while a mutual investor who has financial connections to the company has been leeching money out of it this whole time. I guess the music business really is a cruel and shallow money trench, but hey, maybe knowing all this stuff, we can listen to it a little bit differently. This is Barely Sociable. Have a good night. Today's video is brought to you by Keeps. Now, before we start today's video, I want to ask you guys a question. If you had to take a guess at the most common demographic present on my channel, what would you guess? Well, according to YouTube's own analytics, the most popular demographic on my channel is 25 to 34 male. And if you're wondering what life has in store for you throughout these years, well, according to the American Hair Loss Association, 2 out of 3 guys will experience some form of male pattern baldness by the time they're 35. And the quarter of that same group will see that process begin at around 21. But that being said, there's no need to stress about being a statistic. With Keeps, you can get treated for hair loss online from the comfort of your own home, with direct access to a licensed doctor that will recommend a hair loss treatment plan specifically for you. And they will see to it that your treatment gets shipped to you every 3 months. And not only does Keeps provide a service that will make this entire process easier, you'll also save money as Keeps offers generic versions of the FDA-approved medications for hair loss. And when it comes to treatments like these, prevention is key. So ultimately, the faster you act, the more hair you'll save. And if you want to get started today, the less you'll pay by going to keeps.com/barely, or click the link in the description to get 50% off your first order. Once again, that's keeps.com/barely. And thanks again to Keeps for sponsoring today's video. Now, it's been a while since we've covered any creepy media across my YouTube channels. And the reason that I rarely cover this kind of stuff is that the majority of these home films or home VHS tapes that are found by the internet to be creepy, most of the time are nothing besides a bit of home video taken out of context. But I can't really say that about today's topic that we are going to be taking a look at, because this video, wow, it really boggles my mind that stuff like this can just be found floating around on YouTube. And at the time of me writing the script for this video, this random upload has only about 50 views, and no Reddit threads or any other websites have picked up on this internet mystery yet. And while normally I'd be incredibly skeptical at any random creepy videos that appear uploaded on these pretenses, I'll explain to you first how I found this video, and I will say that this was sent to me by a user by the name of Castigamat, who was the same person who actually wrote about that Nanny Lynn video a while back and led me to covering that topic. And just recently, he reached out to me on Twitter asking me what I thought about this particular film that he had found on YouTube. And the upload he linked me to was uploaded to a channel by the name of Dr. Rip VHS. Now, I will say I get sent a bunch of creepy videos all the time. Much of them are just half-assed attempts at being ARGs that they want me to cover. But this was different, as the uploader is a person who collects rare VHS tapes from Goodwill. And with looking at this guy's content, this guy seems to be a legitimate collector with a provable backlog. And when I realized this, it piqued my interest, as this guy was asking for help identifying the tape in his description. And after going through this film incredibly carefully, I was actually able to piece together clues from the video itself to solve this one. And I must say, I'm a little shocked at what this guy found sitting in a Goodwill outlet.
The VHS is titled Jerry Hill 199M, New York 252958. This was due to the given handwritten label on the VHS itself. The runtime is 8 minutes and 51 seconds, and the disturbing portion of this film can be seen written over parts of a 1988 television show called Camera Infragante. The tape has no sound, and after 21 seconds, we are greeted with a title at the bottom of the tape reading, "Good Boy." Here the camera shows 3 VHS tapes laid across the camouflage mat, where the camera pans in to show us a newspaper clipping. Around 38 seconds, the title is visible. Man charged with spraying irritant in Disneyland. Not much else is visible throughout the duration of the segment. And after zooming back and forth, the video cuts to a change in the title at the bottom. Dead Guest, it reads. All older photographs, seeming to indicate to the viewer that these people have passed away. The camera lingers for some time until 2 minutes in, when the screen cuts to black and it reads, quote, nerve gas. Until 2 minutes and 25 seconds, the phrase continues, made easy. And just 10 seconds later, the video continues to greet the viewer with various things spread across the same camouflage mat. First is various chemicals, a pair of tongs, a clock pointing to 9 p.m., and lastly, the number 14. At 2 minutes and 54 seconds, a hand with rubber gloves appears to pour some of the liquid. It's a clear substance. And later the figure would open up a metal container to reveal another bottle of chemicals inside. From hereafter, the figure continues over to the calendar, and we see a clear date. April 14th, 1995. And when paired with the clock, it seems to indicate the time of 9 p.m. on that date. We're at 4 minutes and 56 seconds. The camera then cuts to the phrase, dead guest, again. And throughout the rest of the video, it shows various other chemicals. Some in a freezer, where the figure would continue to show them off to the camera. Until at 6 minutes, it would show a cutaway to an undisclosed street. And just like that, the tape would cut back to the TV show.
Now, that video is pretty cryptic, and while you might assume that the VHS title might yield some results regarding who made the film, not a single result comes up on Google pertaining to this name. However, on the other hand, the label on the tape seems to follow the FBI's Central Records System format, which, in case you are unfamiliar with how the FBI classifies its documents, here's a brief overview. The first digits on the FBI's record-keeping system classifies the investigation. The second code is what office the file originated from, and the third is the unique file number. Now, I'm not entirely sure what the M is in this case. However, if we look up the code 199 in the FBI's classification guidebook, you'll see that the code is related to foreign counterintelligence. And let me add that it's a very specific form of counterintelligence, and YouTube really doesn't like this word, but I'll let you read it yourself. So to summarize, this tape is related to counterintelligence, the file originates from the New York office, and the case ID is the following. And according to Dr. Rip, this tape was found at a Goodwill in Portland, Oregon. So let's next address the name found on the tape. While I have to admit the name Jerry Hill is a rather common name, there also appears to have been a FBI special agent acting around the 90s under this same name. According to newspapers, in the late 90s he was located in Nevada, and the last newspaper I could find referencing the special agent came from 2003, where the newspaper lists him as a special agent of the Portland FBI. If he retired from this point afterwards, it explains how we came in contact with this tape. So that being said, let's move on to the contents of the tape itself. Starting off, if you recall the newspaper clipping from the start of the video, the original article is dated April 1st, 1995, where this article discussed a man who released a noxious substance at Disneyland that got 33 people sick. When you see this paired with the phrase "good boy," it seems like the guy was cheering on another attack. And when you pair the phrase "dead guest" and the further mention of nerve gas, this seems to be a video of someone threatening the park's visitors. Because in case you are unfamiliar with nerve gas, even the slightest exposure to the substance can be lethal, as it causes respiratory paralysis. Or in other words, it just causes you to stop breathing. And what makes this video so unbelievably creepy is when you search for the date responsible for this particular incident. That being the date shown on the calendar, because if you search back in news archives for April 14th, 1995, Disneyland had received a VHS tape to the park's security office on a day prior, April 13th. And according to an article from the Los Angeles Times, Disneyland spokesman Tom Brocato said Saturday that the park's security office had received a threat on April 13th in a letter and videotape that showed a man wearing rubber gloves and mixing chemicals. U.S. authorities were immediately notified, according to Disneyland officials. Stern said the anonymous threat implied that a gas attack similar to the one in Tokyo in March could be expected at the Orange County theme park. Now, I will note that this videotape that was received to Disney on April 13th, 1995 was later labeled a hoax, as nothing had taken place. But I think it's worth explaining the full story behind this tape as a whole, because while it may be true that this was technically a hoax, there's a lot more context here that's worth considering. And there's even more evidence to suggest that the tape that we just saw was the same one received to Disney that day. The full story regarding this tape begins with one of the most infamous cults in existence, Shinrikyo, or Supreme Truth, a Japanese doomsday cult that would deploy toxic gas similar to the sarin nerve agent in a Tokyo subway on March 20th, 1995. This event would prompt law enforcement around the world to take action regarding this cult, as their presence became an ever-growing threat to the general public. A couple weeks later, at the start of April in 1995, Japanese law enforcement then notified U.S. authorities that two self-proclaimed cult members had been en route to Los Angeles International Airport. When the cult members arrived at LAX, they arrived a week before Easter. Several sources noted that they were stopped and questioned. However, whatever happened at this point isn't fully clear, as the FBI would not give information involving an ongoing investigation. Some reporting on the subject states that two Japanese men were detained for questioning, but where details seem to conflict regarding the reports is whether or not the men were released thereafter and what criminal evidence they actually found that day. On one hand, the Baltimore Sun had initially reported that when the two Japanese men were detained there, they were found to have had written instructions on how to make sarin and a VHS tape where 3 dates were circled on the calendar on that tape, with the dates April 14th, 15th, and 16th, as well as 9 p.m. written on each of those days in the calendar, and that their planned target was Disneyland. But it's also worth pointing out that this report seems to conflict with another report given by a Japanese official. A Japanese foreign ministry spokesman said that authorities at the airport found that the two men had in their possession printed material related to sarin, the nerve agent used in the Tokyo attack. Under questioning, the men said that their purpose was to get information from chemists there on how chemical substances related to sarin could be used for pesticides, the Japanese spokesman said. U.S. authorities at the airport accepted the men's explanation. The foreign ministry spokesman said, adding that nothing criminal was found, and supposedly thereafter the two cult members were released. Now, like I said, it's hard to say what exactly happened here on this particular day, and it's also worth pointing out that the DOJ spokesman completely refuted that anybody was questioned at all, and he also refused to comment about anything regarding a videotape. But what is consistent among the reporting hereafter, it's that every source states that they have no clue as to the whereabouts of the cult members after their questioning. And just days after these men were questioned, that's when Disneyland received this anonymous threat to their security office. And as you can imagine, given the full context of what I've shared with you, this threat was not taken lightly. So much so that even the President of the United States, President Clinton at the time, ended up commenting on the efforts to prevent any incident from happening at Disneyland that particular weekend. And since no attack ended up taking place at this time, the threat was deemed a hoax. And this was the final word given on the subject. Investigators said Saturday that the hoax might have been perpetrated by a current or